You need to create a digital twin for your pet to determine the aging process of your dog. When you test enough parameters in your pet, you can predict when they're going to develop disease, what kind of diseases are going to be more susceptible for your specific breed of dog, and also the predicted lifespan and health span of your dog.
What we're trying to do is democratize that so that everyone has a working knowledge of what not a dog should be worried about, but what this dog should be worried about.
So this is something that any pet parent can do that can all give a far wider picture of the status of your pet and also the projection for its longevity.
Well, hi. Welcome to the Dog Longevity Podcast. I am your host, Dr. David Hallworth. I'm a veterinarian with a PhD in physiology and a deep passion for the bond we share with our pets. In this podcast, I get to speak with people who are helping us rethink how we care for dogs with a focus on helping them live longer, healthier, better lives. This broadcast is brought to you by Panio, a platform designed to bring together all the information around your pet, from health and lifestyle to genetics, and help turn that data into better decision-making over time. Today, I am pleased to be joined by my friend, Dr. Tomasz George, the Chief Scientific Officer at Panio. Tomasz is a scientist who spent his career working at the intersection of aging, health data, and preventative medicine, with experiences across academia, digital health, and med tech. So in this conversation, we're going to explore how lessons from human health data can help us better understand disease risks in dogs, how early signals of illness are often missed, what things work in humans and might not work in dogs or maybe even be detrimental, and what prevention could really look like when we start connecting data more intelligently. Tomasz, welcome.
Oh, my pleasure to be on with you, David. Thank you.
So this is going to be a really fun and exciting conversation. Most of our listeners are pet owners who are engaged in the longevity conversations that are happening on the human side. And I think where you're going to be able to help us bridge from that decades of really intensive work into the much more nascent area of science around dogs and their processes of aging. So, why don't we start there? So give us your viewpoint on how aging in humans is similar and different from that in dogs, and how can we use this to optimize their health and length of life?
Yeah, sure. So actually, my experience in human aging is quite extensive. I have a PhD in it. So I got this in 2009 when longevity was a bit of a kind of early stage process and discipline. Now it's really progressed, and there are lots of influencers globally that are kind of championing longevity. And now, but only now, with my latest company, Panio, are we shifting over a lot of our thoughts from human longevity into dogs. So one of the things I figured out when in my PhD many, many years ago now was if you take elderly cells and you put them into a young environment, they perform just as well as the young cells do in a young environment. And this was a bit of a kind of turn up for the books at the time, because everyone thought that aging and the longevity process was just about telomeres, which are the kind of bits at the end of your DNA that whenever you replicate your DNA, they reduce ever so slightly. And when they get to a certain level, it kind of programs the cell to die instead of the genetic material of the cell getting mutations from over-replicating.
Let me just repeat that, because I think it's really cool, because some people will still hear about telomeric age theory about how many cells have a certain number of times that they can divide, because every time a little bit at the end lops off. And the theory was, at least for all cells, once enough of those bits have been lopped off the end of the DNA strand, the cells got the signal that they could no longer divide, and therefore they had to enter into senescence. And you're saying that that's really not necessarily the case, or at least it's not the whole picture.
Well, it's not the whole picture. So when you look at the telomeres at the end of the cells, if that was the only thing playing a role in your longevity, then humans at least would live till probably about 115, 120. So if we kind of took that as the be all and end all of things, then actually we all should live a lot longer than we do, because the current life expectancy is around 80 or so. So there's a lot of other factors playing a role. And disease, which actually isn't part of the aging process, really, is one of the key ones. But then there's also other factors that kind of really like accelerate that aging process beyond just the telomeres.
Right.
And a lot of these are very translatable between humans and dogs, and actually any mammals, really. And so dogs, the same as humans, they experience this genetic instability as you age. So accumulating mutations, but also having the telomeres at the end of your DNA shorten. And this is one of the things that contributes to the aging process and causes cells to enter senescence or atrophy and die. And that's part of the aging process. But then you also have another thing associated with genetics that's called epigenetics. And this is what can be passed on from your kind of your dog's mother and father, or your human parents and grandparents, even down to you. And this is how your methylation of your DNA changes. And your DNA expression, so the way that your DNA is translated into proteins that then go and function within your body, this relates to like how your DNA is kind of transcribed in your cells.
Mm-hmm.
And so methylation changes this transcription process. So when your cells are over-methylated or under-methylated in terms of their DNA in certain portions, certain elements of your DNA are going to be under-transcribed. So
Right.
you might get a deficiency in a certain protein that might be affecting your digestion or affecting how your glucose is metabolized, this kind of thing.
And what causes the methylation?
So methylation it can be caused by your diet and lifestyle. And your diet and lifestyle can affect this, but it also is affected by stress, and it's affected by your stresses and traumas that like your ancestors may have had as well.
Wow. So this is almost like a genetic memory kind of a thing.
It is certainly. Yeah.
Fascinating. So let me see if I captured what you just said. So what we're finding is that one of the aspects, telomeric aging may set an upper limit, 120, 115. But most people are going to be some degree of less than that. And then largely there's a number of things that enter into that. Diseases is one thing that can obviously shorten the lifespan, but diseases, that's not part of aging. So if we assume that disease is not part of the aging process, it's really epigenetic changes going into the DNA that look like a very promising area for us to further understand. Primarily, epigenetic changes are moderated by methyl groups being put onto the DNA, not to get too geeky, but basically it's just little check marks that are being put into the DNA strands that somewhat regulates how things are transcribed, either over-transcribed or under-transcribed, and that those methyl tick marks in the DNA can be made by a whole number of things: diet, lifestyle, stresses, and even stresses of your ancestors, because some of these methyl groups, I'm assuming, can be brought in with the DNA as you're conceived. Is that
Exactly.
essentially all right?
Yeah, that covers it exactly. And actually, one of the latest kind of testing processes in the longevity world is using aging clocks to determine where your DNA is like under or over methylated. And so there's quite a few of these that have been kind of shown in humans to be effective in terms of assessing your rate of aging.
These are essentially biological clocks. So I may be 57 human years old, but my biological clock, because of all the bad choices that I've made, might show that I'm 65. Or because I've made good choices, it might show that I'm equivalent to 50.
Exactly, yeah.
Fascinating.
A few of these aging clocks that we use in humans. So one can determine your aging number. So as you say, whether that's like over or under your chronological age. Then there's another one that can determine your rate of aging. So it can be like actually that currently you're 20 years below your chronological age, but your rate of aging is at 2 years per year. So you're going to catch it up pretty soon.
I'm going to catch myself up pretty fast.
Exactly.
Cool.
And then the other kind of aging clock can determine your risk of getting diseases. based on your genetic predispositions and your methylation of certain areas of your DNA as well.
Oh, interesting.
So this has been quite well established for humans, and now this is being translated to dogs as well. And the Dog Aging Project is kind of looking at some of these clocks and how we can actually adapt some of the ones that have been developed on humans to dogs as well. So hopefully in the future, we'll be able to have an even better insight into your dog's longevity and the aging process based on these.
One of my favorite aspects of veterinary medicine is that humans create a really nice experimental model for the species that I'm much more interested in dogs and cats. So if the more work that can be done on humans, and then hopefully it's much easier to translate instead of having to do all that work de novo. As you've started to look into the dog translation of the human research, what's been one of the bigger surprises that you've found?
So I think from my research specifically, it was that actually your cells are they're aging, but they're kind of secondary to the environment that you put them in. So in my PhD, I was the first person to show that when you take elderly cells and you put them into a young environment, they perform just as well as the young cells do in that young environment. And then a lot of people have kind of jumped on my research down the road for this and started injecting themselves with young blood and trying to find the elixir of life, this kind of thing.
Chromogens, yeah.
Yes, with varying levels of success there, I think. But in general, when you try and promote a young environment in your body, then the cells adapt to that young environment and get a younger phenotype. And the best takeaway I can give you for that is actually to optimize your diet, lifestyle, exercise, all the processes that you're doing to allow for that young environment to foster in the body. So then it kind of has a regulatory effect on your cells themselves and improves the aging process. So this is something that any pet parent can do, optimize the diet and lifestyle of their dog.
So let's keep going on that. So what kind of optimization steps do you do? We've already had conversations with some nutritionists. Dogs have a very, I should say, controllable diet compared to humans. You and I travel around the world. We eat in restaurants. It's hard to know exactly what went into that. How fresh are all the ingredients? Even if we do it all at home, we still want variety in our diets. Whereas dogs tend to eat the same thing day after day, night after night. Is that, assuming that it's a balanced diet to the extent that we can define that, is that enough?
Well, it may be, but it may not be. So, and this is where the key comes in for this for longevity, is you need to create a digital twin for your pet, essentially, to determine the aging process of your dog. So, and when you test enough parameters in your pet, you can determine how the areas in which they're functioning perfectly and the areas which they're not. And also have a profile that you can use to predict when they're going to develop disease, further on in life, what kind of diseases are going to be more susceptible for your specific breed of dog, and also the predicted lifespan and health span of your dog. So this is something we're doing at Panio, and that's the kind of starting point for your dog, is determining its current state and where we predict it to go in the future, so you can make the requisite changes early on so that it optimizes its diet and lifestyle and optimizes the cellular environment for the best aging process that you can imagine.
So, when I think about digital twins, it reminds me of what a clinical veterinarian does every time a new dog walks into the room. We have a head space of, all right, this is a male, neutered, 7-year-old English Spaniel. I have in my head what that dog should be susceptible to, the things I should be looking for in particular. Now, of course, you do a full physical exam, you do the full workup as you can. And let's assume this is a wellness exam and you're not really trying to dive into what's the disease that I'm looking for, but you certainly have things to work off of. and it feels as though what we're trying to do is democratize that, and with a little d, create so that everyone has a working knowledge of what not a dog should be worried about, but what this dog should be worried about. Is that a fair way to consider what a digital twin is? It's just we're using science to pull all of this stuff in without the bother of having to go to 4 years of veterinary school and 12 years of practical experience in the clinic.
Well, that's precisely it. But then also when you meet a dog in your surgery, in your vet practice, you'll be able to assess them to a certain extent with your knowledge, experience, and also some testing that you can do on site for that pet and their medical history. But there's also other elements that you can assess that are not readily available to a vet. So we look at things like their genetics in an extensive genetic profile, hair mineral analysis, also looking at the microbiome and stool analysis. Then we can assess things like their lifestyle, so exercise, nervous system function, lifestyle assessments through the app as well, and blood tests and things like this that can all give a far wider picture of the status of your pet and also the projection for its longevity. And when you take all of this data as well, it becomes quite a useful resource for a vet if you were to turn up into the vet's clinic and provide additional information on that pet's lifestyle that maybe you can't get from just a immediate assessment of the dog.
When we talk about those kinds of tools, those are, kind of an extraordinary assist for veterinarians who understand how to interpret that. And I think that's the other phase. All right, just a quick one before we carry on. If you're enjoying this conversation, hit follow or subscribe wherever you're listening. It really helps the show grow and lets us keep bringing on great guests. Okay, let's get back to the conversation. So, I think many people who listen to us are very into the longevity trends, let's say, maybe, hopefully the research as well. I mean, many of the trends currently going on in human longevity circles are highly research based. Some of them are less so, as you said, looking, transfusing young people blood into yourself, to hoping that that's going to somehow have the elixir of life. Probably less research based.
Yeah. I think that's for certain.
Some of those factors, some of the supplements, some other things that do translate quite well into dogs, and we've got good reason to do it. Could you list off a few of those that come to mind quickly?
So there are a few kind of just general strategies that you can do for your dog. So time restricted feeding, that's got very strong evidence for both humans and dogs. So this would be kind of switching to one meal a day, essentially, instead of two potentially. What this allows is for the time when your dog isn't eating and digesting, it switches on certain processes in the body that help the cells to repair. So if you fast for even a short amount of time, then your body kickstarts its repair process mechanisms for the cells, because it considers that maybe we're in a state of fasting and we don't know when our next meal is going to be. So we have to preserve the material that we have and the kind of the cells that we have by repairing them, instead of getting rid of them and assuming that we'll have enough protein and kind of nutrients to replace them.
Fascinating. Yeah. So just repeating that. So we've already talked about caloric restrictions being one of the few aspects that is sort of unequivocally across all species. Caloric restriction, eating less than you are hungry for, is it is a way to extend life. Now, of course, the problem in humans is that people who are at 75% of their satiety in calories tend to be hungry and angry all the time, which might be extending life, but it's not extending the quality of life nearly as much. Having been around retrievers and golden and Labrador retrievers most of my personal life, they would also tell you that they are always starving, no matter how much they have eaten or how recently they've eaten. But we can, if we get into giving them, let's just say, controlled fasting periods, perhaps that's once a day. Is there a magic moment for dogs, or for humans for that matter, that kicks into some of these fasting cell repair pathways, as opposed to, is it almost instantaneous once you've eaten, no longer, or is there some period of time?
So for humans, it's around about 16 hours.
Okay.
So 16 hours of fasting, and then you kick into this repair mechanism. This is why kind of the 1 meal a day works well, because you'll get a few hours of repair that you wouldn't have gotten otherwise. But actually, if you're thinking about a Labrador or a very hungry human, then there are actually some drugs and interventions that are coming onto the market very soon that are going to be like mimicking fasting. One of these that's actually gone through the most testing is one called Rapamycin. And this has been tested extensively in humans. It kind of mimics that fasting process without you having to fast. So it kind of kickstarts this regenerative potential of your cells without you having to adjust your eating patterns at all. And there are actually a few trials in dogs that have kind of come through testing rapamycin already. So there's one out of Texas A&M in the States, and then the Dog Aging Project again has another rapamycin trial, and they're both looking quite promising so far. But I think we're a little bit off when this is going to be in the market.
Have we had any real data?
So there's some initial insights from it, but I think it's looking promising. I wouldn't say it's definitely going to be out into the market soon, but
don't go to Easter Island, grab some soil, and start feeding your dogs rapamycin from
no, certainly not yet.
Source. Okay, we'll hold off on that. But Rapa is, one of the also problems with rapamycin is that it's been off patent for forever, and so we have to find the economic incentives for companies to offer these things. But that should be a low bar given the interest that people have.
Absolutely, yeah.
Any other supplements that come to mind that you think clearly this translates?
I like to split up kind of supplements into what's natural and you can do without prescription, and then others that are kind of maybe a bit more efficacious, but you have to take on prescription. So as we're talking about rapamycin, I might as well go for the kind of pharmacological ones first, and then we can go into the more kind of daily supplements that you can integrate into your pet's lifestyle that aren't quite as kind of intensive, I'd say. So there's another one called metformin. This has shown it activates kind of a mitochondrial complex in the body to also switch on some of these protective mechanisms to the cells. Then there are GLP-1s, which are we all know from humans, and we all know actually that there's side effects now that we hadn't really thought of before, and you see a lot of the celebrities on TV at the moment looking very gaunt and having lost a lot of muscle mass.
So expand on that, would you mind, Tomasz? For those people who just know GLP as a weight loss indicator or a weight loss drug, what are the other side effects that we're seeing?
So GLPs kind of they basically signal the body that it's full. And so you'll only want to eat a very small amount of food before you feel like you're satiated and full. And with this, there's kind of various side effects. Like some people have reported vision loss, even like that's the most extreme that we've seen. But also not being able to produce saliva to kind of digest your food as well. So people have halitosis problems and things from that. And there's also the problem that people don't adjust their diet around the drug. So a lot of people have kind of had a huge muscle loss as well as fat loss, and this is very detrimental to the aging process specifically, because sarcopenia is one of the things with age that's kind of affects people the most with aging. Sarcopenia is the loss of muscle,
right?
And so when you lose muscle to a certain extent, it increases your chance of like hip dysplasia, trips and falls, and this is also true for dogs as well. So even though there's some promise with GLP-1s, I think we need to treat them with a lot of caution. And I think the protocols that people are currently on with them are probably too intensive. And I would suggest we do some sort of microdosing approach to GLP-1s alongside diet and lifestyle modification so that people can see better effects of their kind of dieting and their exercise, as opposed to just thinking that your GLP-1 drug is the silver bullet and not making any changes to your diet and lifestyle around it, which is what I think a lot of people do.
I want to wrap this the pharmaceutical supplement side up, but I do think it's been really interesting in the conversations around GLP-1. There is the theory that our bodies were really built to periodic fasting, to times of drought, seasons of winter where their food is scarcer, and we then build into a regenerative phase, and then summer comes, and then fall comes, and we go into a gorging phase. And that's, if you buy into that, it seems to me like in this now age of non-seasons in terms of what is available to eat, and we always are feeding ourselves for that fast that will never come, it might make much more sense to just be on GLPs for 3 to 4 months of a year, and then the rest of the year allow your body to eat normally, or however that is, in order to get down. But yeah, I've always wondered about the let's just go on GLP-1 for life. There is a rebound. And of course, that's the reason that people say we should stay on. If you come off of them, you will rebound, sometimes up to 60, 70% of the weight that's been lost gets gained back. Strikes me, I've always wondered why we thought of it that way, instead of saying, yes, but you're drug-free and you've still lost 30 to 40% of the amount initially.
But I do think kind of having a cycle of kind of weight loss and weight gain is more detrimental than...
Oh, I don't mean yo-yos. I think when I'm thinking about this, it's in the 3 to 5% kind of range. You have to start at a healthy weight to begin with, which is, I think, also, as we think about longevity, it's the difference between optimizing and coming from a disease state. If you are obese, if you're in a position of being obese, or let's move it back to dogs. If your dog is in a position of being obese, you need to get back to a healthy state first, but then going through periodic fasting. Thanks for that clarification. I didn't mean to imply that I think we should be losing 50 pounds up and down on a regular basis. That not only would that be terrible for the body, it'd be terrible for your wardrobe.
Oh, it certainly would, yeah. But unfortunately, that's the reality for a lot of the GLP-1 kind of users at the moment in the human world.
For sure.
That the drugs aren't readily available and they're quite expensive. So people go on them in a cyclic fashion, which is probably the worst thing you can do.
Fascinating.
The last one I wanted to touch on actually is Senolytics. So Senolytics are a kind of class of drug that they work on senescent cells. So we talked about senescent cells briefly before when we talked about the telomere shortening and cells kind of dying. But senescent cells are cells that basically go into a kind of zombie state where they're not quite dead, but they're producing a lot of factors that actually influence the cells around them to also go into senescence. So it's kind of like a kind of perpetual cycle of cells dying, but also not functioning correctly, but the body can't get rid of them. So they're like zombie cells in the body. And what Senolytics do is they target these zombie cells and remove them so that they're not infecting other cells around them. And this is one of the most promising treatments for aging, because as you age, you accumulate more and more of these senescent cells that are really detrimental.
Do we know what causes a cell to go into a senescent state?
Let me try and explain it easily. So
the answer is probably not 100%, or else
We do have an idea, but it's kind of like it's something that's kind of a bit of an anomaly for the body, because ideally you would just get rid of cells that were programmed to die. But we don't really know why they go into this kind of zombie state. But it's what we do know is it really is very detrimental to the other cells around in the aging process. And if we can reduce the number of these senolytic cells, it's a real benefit to the aging process. And as well as some of the drugs available, there's quite a few things that you can do in diet and lifestyle that really affect this too.
Like
things like green tea is one of the biggest for humans. And I don't know if anyone's tried feeding dogs green tea, but it can really, I guess that might help. Also, kind of berries, like tart berries, like blueberries and blackberries, that kind of thing can really help too. So there's a similar process for these senolytic cells as it is for kind of cells going into a cancerous state too.
Oh, interesting.
There is a theory that it's kind of like when your cells divide, if your environment isn't optimized for those cell divisions, one cell might go on to be healthy, the other one may go into kind of this cancerous state or senolytic state too.
Interesting. So optimizing that environment is again a product of lifestyle, food, supplements, phase of the moon, lots of things that we can't really control for, as well as some of those things that we can. And I think that's, as we go through longevity philosophies, it's really trying to identify those aspects that one can controlling them to the best of our abilities, while still maintaining qualities of life, which is really interesting. So let's move over to the supplement side. We went through the 4 areas of prescriptions in supplements, which don't require. I'd love to touch on both the supplements that do have some science behind them in dogs, but then also let's make sure we touch on those things which may be working in humans, but actually may be detrimental in dogs.
Sure. So in terms of the ones that are kind of showing the most cross-species applicability between humans and dogs, I would say omega-3 fatty acids. So, and a lot of these you can kind of get from diet as well as supplementation. So omega-3s you can get from oily fish, but then you can also have as oily fish supplements. So omega-3s are really good for that, and it's really good for cardiovascular health, also for digestion as well, and for reducing inflammation. And NAD precursors. So NAD is a substance in the body that's involved with brain function and with metabolic function, and it goes down with age in everybody, both humans and dogs. So taking NAD on its own or taking precursors to NAD is really quite beneficial. So this could be nicotinamide or MNN, which are precursors to NAD.
And are there doses for this, Tomasz? Do we have reasonable dosages? I mean, you can go get NAD or nicotinamide or omega-3s.
It's going to vary depending on the size of your dog.
Of course.
So,
right.
So I think you need to test your dog to see if it needs it first, and then get a protocol that's like very specific to your pet.
Yeah, so it's complicated for sure.
And I wouldn't go giving your pet human doses because it's just not going to work.
Yeah, unless your pet happens to be 150 pounds, and there aren't that many dogs at 150 pounds.
Some are, but it's very rare. The other ones are probiotics, and there are a lot of strains of probiotic that are applicable to both humans and dogs.
Very similar GI tracts, really. I mean, they're both omnivore species. Both of us can do most of our protein digestion up in the upper area, and then absorption down, with a huge component of the microbiome being down into the lower intestines. Great. That makes perfect sense.
Then for inflammation, which is another key proponent of the aging process, things like turmeric or curcumin, which is the active ingredient in turmeric, really help. And then magnesium as well is something that, as a whole, in the kind of both human and pet world, we're not getting enough magnesium. And this is primarily because of the way food is cultivated at the moment, and magnesium in the soil has dropped significantly over the past 100 years or so. So it's useful to get additional magnesium for most people and dogs. And then the last thing I would say is vitamin D. And this is particularly true for dogs that are kept indoors a lot.
So we've got those six that you've discussed just now. And then what are some of the things commonly used in humans that you just want to make sure pet owners avoid?
So things like resveratrol, which is the active ingredient in red wine. So people kind of are proponents of a single glass of red wine a day, but mainly for the resveratrol, which is a bit of a kind of misnomer as to whether it actually provides enough to make a difference in humans. I think it's just an excuse.
Tomasz, I don't know what you're talking about. I'm sure any study that tells me I should have red wine and chocolate, I'm going to follow, regardless of the quality of that science.
Nice. And anything to make your stress levels go down as well, which is also a key component of the aging process.
That's what it was. That's exactly right. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So resveratrol is kind of, I think it causes kidney toxicity potentially in dogs, so it probably should be avoided. The same with grapeseed extract. Garlic as well can have problems with anemia for dogs. Onions, onion extract or quercetin, which is a key senolytic actually in humans, but this shouldn't be given to dogs.
No, the anemia is real, and it's actually a bone marrow based anemia that garlic and onions both can cause. And just avoiding the extracts is great. Grape seeds also can be nephrotoxic. So awesome. Okay.
Yes. Yeah. So if you're looking to kind of give your dogs any longevity supplements, please check that they're not human supplements, because a lot of the human ones contain some of these compounds that could be toxic to your dog as well.
Yeah, thank you for saying all those things, Tomasz. It's one of those, I oftentimes say it's easy to just assume that whatever a human can eat, your dog can eat, but there are some very important, notable exceptions that can cause real problems.
Yeah, so that's the main thing I think for supplementation, but then obviously you can do things outside of the supplementation, so optimizing diet, trying to support your metabolic health in your pet as well, so maintaining healthy weight, and also trying to reduce sugar. One of the key elements is kind of sugar metabolism and development of type 2 diabetes, and kind of insulin resistance as well in your dog. And these often go unnoticed for a long time. If you're feeding your dog too much sugar, then this can be a real precursor to a lot of these conditions. And also just tracking your dog's health as much as you can over the course of its lifetime, either through your vet or through kind of apps like ours.
Sure. Yeah. And I think these are all new. I mean, up until 5 years ago, we didn't really have much of that. People would either carry around a folder with their veterinary records, which are spotty at best, because most documentation comes when your animal has been sick, not when it's been well. And trying to track, it's not as though you and I wake up every morning probably thinking about how we're feeling, whereas our dogs wake up every morning thinking of probably understanding whether they feel good or bad, but not being able to communicate that nearly as well. So I think this is an important thing, and more routine tracking. So, you've been for the last 16 or so years, been very deep into the human sets of longevity and moved over into the animal side fairly recently. Are there some areas that you think, God, if we had just known this 15 years ago on the human side, we would have immediately done it, and therefore be able to leapfrog for our veterinary patients some of those hard won lessons? Are there some of those that jump to your mind as you've been going on this quest lately?
Yeah, I think there's a lot that we can do in terms of kind of just like hacking for dogs as well in terms of their longevity. So there's a few different kind of things that you can introduce to a dog's diet that could be very helpful in terms of its aging profile. The first being beetroot or any kind of foods that have nitrites in, because they help to promote arterial health in pets and in humans. And any kind of berries like blueberries, blackberries, that these support and antioxidants in the body, so they can reduce oxidative stress and improve cognitive health in your dogs too.
Mm-hmm.
Any kind of cruciferous vegetables, so broccoli, sprouts, that kind of thing, can help with detoxification, so improve liver function and remove any kind of toxins that the dog may have eaten or ingested. But this needs to be cooked first, ideally.
The cruciferous vegetables.
Cruciferous vegetables, yeah. But then often when you kind of cook the cruciferous vegetables, it denatures some of the enzymes that are beneficial, but it helps with the digestion for the dog. But you can actually activate a lot of the enzymes by adding mustard to it, so mustard seeds or kind of mustard greens alongside it. And that reactivates a lot of the enzymes that are beneficial in the broccoli or the sprouts. Then adding oily fish, so salmon, sardines, mackerel, because they're great sources of omega-3, brilliant for inflammation and for digestion and brain health. Then turmeric as well you can add. And if you add black pepper to it as well, it improves absorption of the turmeric. And then finally, things like seeds, so pumpkin seeds and kind of like any flax seeds, any kind of seeds like that are really high in magnesium and zinc that can help support immune function and digestion as well.
Amazing.
If you can just go, like, I don't know, I don't know how palatable this might be to your pet initially, but if you can find a way of like mixing it into its food, then perfect.
Yeah, no, I think it's always good to try these things, if any case, for pet owners. Try, if you're having broccoli yourself, none of these are bad for us, right? So if you're trying a little bit with your food, put a little top dressing on, not too much, but no more than 5% of the total caloric intake. See if that you might find that your dog absolutely loves broccoli. I happen to have dogs that love broccoli. And it makes it for quite easy when they think that they're getting a treat as I chop up the head of broccoli for myself. Yeah. No, it's these are all great suggestions.
Often I find that if I'm lacking in something, I'll crave it anyway, and I'll go for some beetroot if I feel like I need some better arterial health. And I think potentially that could be the case with your dog as well, where actually if it's needing something and you add it to their food, then they're going to lap it up, I'm sure.
It's palatable. Nature does work in pretty good ways that way. That's awesome.
Yeah.
That is awesome. Well, we're coming up to the end of our time. Tomasz, this has been fascinating, both from a science standpoint, but also how do you improve through supplementation, potentially have conversations with your veterinarian. Panio is, of course, creating this platform, also creating this podcast. So as we think about tools to use to bring these things front of mind and just make it easier for pet owners to help their pets live the longest, best lives possible, some of those tools are on the horizon, which is really great. Finally, we always ask our guests for 2 recommendations of media, things that inspire you or have you, that if this really resonated with listeners of the podcast, where would they go to continue their journey on this idea?
I was in Davos actually last month for the World Economic Forum, and part of a lot of really interesting discussions out there on mainly on kind of AI and how AI is going to be influencing the world of work, but also how we need to utilize AI to optimize the kind of integration of some of these language models that are available in a way that actually benefits humanity and benefits like the different use cases. And so one of the things that I kind of learned or was part of a discussion on in a panel in Davos was what we need from a kind of human perspective to be able to kind of train these AIs and utilize them so we get the best responses. And at Panio, we use AI within our platform, but we try and use it in the most ethical and optimized way so that we get the best responses for our pet owners. And the way you do this is you need to get the right data set first that's validated. So you need to capture as much data as possible from your pet and make sure it's accurate and validated data. Then you need a very smart human being that looks at that data and trains the prompts that go into these AI models. And then the third point is having a model that's validated for your use case and architecturally structured so that it gives the best output. And then have somebody who's also a very clever human being on the other end that takes the response and makes sure that it's like the kind of response that would be accepted and that is validated for all the data that's been pushed in. So we've been training our AI models on dog data for a long time. And we believe now that we're getting to a stage where the outputs from our app in terms of the AI is very relevant to the specific dogs that are providing their data for our platform. And we think this the benefits of taking this approach, where you kind of standardize things from the beginning and make sure it's all validated from the beginning, is that you can just build on it in a way that's going to be safe for dog owners to trust the outputs, and it's just going to build into a way that becomes more beneficial for those dog owners to get the best insights possible for their pets. And so that was the first thing from Davos. And the second thing, I was actually chatting to the CEO of Climate Action in Davos, a guy called Nick Henry, and we were the topic came on to longevity and how we can actually utilize longevity for the benefit of humankind, but also not destroy the environment at the same time.
Right.
Because a lot of the elements that are going into longevity and the potential that people might live forever or dogs might live forever is that we are going counter to what nature intended here.
Of course.
And like already as a planet, we're reducing our human resources and cutting down the environment, and we need to be very conscious as we are going into this stage of kind of optimizing human longevity, that we're not doing it at the detriment of the planet and people around us.
Both fascinating points, and I think really cool topics. Dr. Tomasz George, great conversation with us. Thanks so much. Thanks for all that you're doing and getting the information together and doing the research necessary to help our dogs live longer and healthier lives.
Thank you, David. It's been an absolute pleasure.
We'll talk to you again soon.